This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Experience a membership that backs your business journey with American Express Business Platinum. When you pay with membership rewards points for all or part of an eligible flight booked with a qualifying airline through Amex Travel, you can get 35% of those points back, up to 1 million points back per calendar year. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
Would I value the fact that coaches whiz with the X's and O's, or would I value the loyalty of it all? And, without even thinking, I said loyalty. And he smiled and kind of smirked, and he was like, you nailed it. So that's one of the biggest things that I've learned from him is the loyalty aspect, how to lead a program.
Before we get into today's conversation, this episode is brought to you by Modern Football. For years, coaches have charted games with paper, pens, highlighters, and calculators trying to piece everything together before the next series begins. Modern Football turns that charting into immediate, usable information. Track play efficiency, explosives, player touches, tendencies, and results while the game is happening instead of waiting until halftime or the next morning to identify a pattern. Your staff can get the insight it needs between series and make better adjustments when they still matter. Joseph Loyd and the DeSoto staff use Modern Football through their state championship run to quickly answer questions about run efficiency, passing concepts, targets, carries, catches, and yardage. Give your play caller better information when decisions have to be made. Visit modernfootball.com to learn more and bring real-time game analytics to your staff. Here's our conversation with Joseph Loyd, wide receiver coach at DeSoto. On today's Coaching Coordinator podcast, we're talking to a 4-time state champion from a nationally known program, the DeSoto Eagles from Texas. Joseph Loyd, he's the receivers coach. He's been a part of 4 state championships there. Prior to that, he was a middle school coach there with an impeccable record, 52-0. I'm going to talk to about what he learned from that experience. But Coach, we're excited to have you here, get you on the podcast and talk some ball.
Thank you, Keith, for having me. I really appreciate you guys, and I appreciate, shout out to Christian and Modern Football for having me. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Coach, let our audience know a little bit about you here. I mentioned the 4 state championships. I also mentioned a 52-0 record coaching middle school, but you've had some great experiences in football and really some great mentors along the way, too. Tell us a little bit about your background in the game.
Well, I graduated college from Stephen F. Austin State University in Deep East, Texas, near my hometown. I'm originally from Lufkin, Texas. It's funny, when I mention, Lufkin, some people, know where Lufkin is, but then when they don't, all I have to say is one word. You know where Dez Bryant is from? Same high school. So, and then they like, oh, okay. But yeah, so I graduated from Stephen F. Austin, had some suitors that I was entertaining, and I ended up landing at Nacogdoches High School for a year. It was close to home, didn't have to uproot my family. So that was the best situation for me. And during that year, I ended up connecting with our head coach and leader, Coach Claude Mathis here at DeSoto during that year. And he offered me a position. And he told me, straight up at that time, he did not have a varsity opportunity available. Would I be willing to, accept a middle school gig? So I was like, yeah, for, a nationally ranked program such as DeSoto, sure. I don't shy away from hard work. My mom and grandmother and dad, raised me to work hard and earn your stripes. So that's the mindset that I had going into DeSoto. So arrived there in 2014, did what I had set out to do, trying to work hard, learn what I needed to learn, and just kind of kept progressing, in my career there, and end up getting blessed with an opportunity to pursue a coordinator job there at one of our most popular middle schools, McCowan Middle School. And that experience kind of helped shape me as a coach. And I know you know, Coach, you've been doing this for a while. I've heard a lot of athletic directors and head coaches say, you ain't coached ball until you've coached at middle school level. And I didn't know what that meant. I was young, naive. I'm like, no, I want to, I came from a varsity program. I want to go right into varsity. But man, when I tell you, I'm thankful and grateful that God blessed me with that opportunity. And I was able to experience that for about 5 years as a coordinator of DeSoto McCowan Middle School, because it helped shape me. It helped me build lifelong connections with staff members, administration, parents, and young athletes. So I would like to say I did a pretty good job, in that experience. And then, I was blessed with another opportunity to climb the ladder to the freshman football program here at DeSoto, where I served as a receiver coach and offensive coordinator there. So just soaked it all in. We had a great head freshman coach who's still there doing his thing. Coach Dennis Walker, a great guy, shout out to him, and stayed with the freshman staff for 2 years. And this will be my official second year going into the varsity program with that staff. And man, I'm just enjoying the ride and loving it.
Yeah. Well, let's focus a little bit on the middle school experience. I mean, that is not an easy group to coach. I mean, you're out there coaching the same game that you are now at the varsity level, but you have these kids and where they are in their developmental stages of, the immaturity, like not being able to communicate. And like, you have to engage, you have to learn to engage those athletes in a different way, in a way that probably makes you much better down the line to engage some of the more mature athletes. And I would say you guys did an excellent job. I mean, a 52-0 record at that level, I think, speaks volumes, but it doesn't happen without being able to connect with your athletes, being able to engage and teach the game to them. So what were some of the things really you established for yourself as a coach at that level that are translating now to the varsity level?
Thank you for asking that, man. It's like, I feel, again, I emphasize God a lot. I'm a very spiritual guy. I believe that he puts pieces and people in your path for a reason. My first campus at DeSoto for his middle school was at DeSoto East Middle School. And one of my best buddies, he was a coordinator there. And he was going through a transition where he was looking to accept another opportunity outside of our district, right? So it was myself and 2 other coaches who was there. And nobody really wanted to take those reins over to lead the remainder of the school year as a coordinator. So I felt something on my chest and in my spirit that, Coach, you need to step up and take control. So that experience there at DeSoto East, that spring semester kind of, helped shape me and help me build the confidence that I needed. And again, look at God. All of a sudden, an opportunity opens up at, the largest middle school here in DeSoto, which was McCowan. And I applied for it, talked to, our athletic director and, and Coach Mathis. And, I was blessed with that opportunity. So going into that, honestly, I was a bit nervous, going into that because now, I have to lead the program. Everything rests on my shoulders, whether we are successful or we fail. So, and I had to, work with our head coach to help build the staff over there. So that was an experience in itself. But I was just blessed, at McCowan to have great athletes, great young athletes, so I learned how to kind of bond with those guys kind of, on a level where we're not just talking about sports. Coach Mathis always has a saying that if I just taught you about sports and athletics, I failed you as a coach. So I kind of take on that mentality too during my experience there at McCowan as their head coach of, I want to teach them about life. I want to teach them about how to be great young men and women. Have I did everything right in my life? Absolutely not. But I've learned from those mistakes and those challenges and obstacles and things like that. Also, during my time there at the middle school level, built great relationship with, with a lot of different parents, So that was an aspect that I was kind of learning and new at as well, just the relationship aspect of everything. Because, I mean, if you want a parent to trust you with with the development and things of their child for the athletic standpoint, you got to connect some type of way. And I feel I was able to do that. So we had great seasons, ups and downs, but in the long run, we ended up finishing the task, middle school district titles and championships and things like that. But, definitely it wasn't all me, whatever. I had great staffs, throughout those 5 years, and again, had great athletes to help me along the way.
So I think you bring some unique perspective to this in that now you are at the varsity level. But Claude Mathis, right, being the guy who is the head coach of that nationally ranked program,
Absolutely.
what did you learn, or what were the things that really helped you guys be successful as he's looking at his program down to the lower levels, looking at the middle schools and helping build and develop that? I mean, what's his approach to it that when you look at it now being up at the top is like, yeah, this is why we're so good?
It's great you asked that because it's unreal how our program operates. For example, again, I come from East Texas and just, kind of being around some of the programs back home. And don't get me wrong, great programs and everything like that. But I always seen a disconnect from the varsity level to the middle school campuses and staffs. Middle school coaches, back where I come from, it's kind of like voluntary, you can come to varsity practice, shadow, help out, if you're able, if you want to. So I was kind of like a culture shock when I got up here to DeSoto. Well, my mentality, I was going to do it anyways, but, coach kind of encouraged us and definitely held us accountable at the middle school level to be involved. Because again, when you're in this business, if you have aspiration of professional development and growth, wanna put your best foot forward, no matter at what level you're on. Quote that I always like that I heard a minister say one time was, don't prepare for where you're at, prepare for where you're going. So that's my mindset and what I always try to do. Great support during my time at the middle school level from our varsity staff, our coordinators, as well as Coach Mathis, always on the campus, always there, building those relationships with us coaches and the middle school athletes, because those are our feeder schools. I don't know if you know anything about South Dallas area or whatever, but we're surrounded, we're like in the Mecca, right? So we're surrounded by the Duncanvilles,
Yep.
the Cedar Hills. Especially when I came in, it was the Joey McGuire days, who's head coach at Texas Tech right now, leading that program. So now you got the Waxahachie's, the Red Oaks, Lancasters, and then the inner city Dallas schools like Oak Cliff. So you got a lot of different programs. These kids and parents have a lot of different choices to go to. So relationships is very important in this neck of the woods in order to keep these kids, engaged and excited about pursuing, continuing their athletic career at the high school level here at DeSoto. So, and Coach Mathis is the driving force of that engine for sure.
Yeah, for you and looking at the influence, the impact he's had on you as a mentor, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned from him that has helped you as a coach?
I would say I always resort back to our first interview that I was privileged to have with Coach. It was a question. He asked me, if I were in his shoes as a hiring manager, interviewing someone else, what would I value more? Would I value, the fact that, that coach is, he's a whiz with the X's and O's, or would I value the loyalty of it all? And without even thinking, I said loyalty. And he smiled and kind of smirked, and he was like, you nailed it. So that's one of the biggest things, that I've learned from him is the loyalty aspect, how to lead a program. Again, when I had my opportunity to lead the middle school, well, a lot of my leadership qualities for as a coach and how I carried myself came from my observations of him over the years and how he, led our varsity program.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Before we continue, I want to thank Modern Football for supporting today's episode. Joseph Loyd talked about trying to chart an up-tempo offense while also watching the field, communicating with coaches, tracking player touches, and answering questions from the play caller. Modern Football helped turn that information into insight his staff could use immediately. Instead of waiting until halftime or the next morning, coaches can see which concepts are working, where the offense is most efficient, and whether their top players are getting enough opportunities, all between series. Your game day data should help you make the next decision, not just record the last play. Visit modernfootball.com to learn how Modern Football can give your staff actionable insights when they matter most. I know now, in being on the varsity level, and you guys won it last year.
Yes, sir.
Which, I mean, to win one nowadays is a tough thing, but you know, 4 now since you've been there, including last year being your first year on staff. Well, one of your responsibilities on game day, and I really think now with the tools available and you guys use Modern Football, your role becomes pretty important because the work you do is providing insight during the game. And it used to be, I was telling you before, you know, using these charts, you know, as an offensive coordinator before, and I will be using Modern Football myself this fall with our staff. I had really 2 of these. I had my calls, which my guys highlighting our efficient plays and circling explosives. And then we had another guy charting the defense. And so what happens in between as a process when you're pen and paper is I'm taking 2 of these and putting them together, trying to figure out where's the pattern, looking at it. I mean, you only have, you got a minute to do that, right? You got to make an adjustment, talk to the QB. Like for you, get the information to the coach so he can do all those things. I mean, it's just not very efficient. A lot of times it doesn't happen until halftime where we make some sense out of those things, right? So very important role though. And now you got a tool that you get insights now from everything you are charting in between every series, like live. And it's happening like that. It's not, all right, what is this? And highlight this, and it is done. You got it in front of you. Here's where we're efficient. Here's where we're explosive. Here's the touches that we have for certain players. Here's what we're seeing in a change versus what we had planned. They're doing something different now. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, your role in providing that real-time in-game analytical data to your play caller.
Yes, sir. All right. As a coach, you know, we can be kind of stubborn at times, you know, what's worked for us in the past, you know, we want to continue doing whatever. And, you know, and like you said, you know, you have your paper, you know, you're taking your notes. So mainly my role on Friday nights, I'm one of the booth coaches, you know, and obviously my job is to see one side of the field. That way, our head and lead a receiver coach and co-offensive coordinator, Kerry Sweeney, just kind of, you know, to help give him some perspective on what's going on the far side of the field. Also, while doing that, I'm also charting the offensive down and distance, you know, and play result sometime when I can get to it, the coverages and things like that. But we also have other coaches that assist in that matter. And when I tell you I was having to do all of that on paper as well as communicate what I'm seeing on the field in game so we can make those adjustments. The Modern Football aspect has made a world of difference for me as a coach and made my job 10 times easier for sure. We live in an age of computers and AI. You know, it's kind of being pushed down our throats right now, and analytics and all of that good stuff. It can be a little intimidating, you know, for coaches who've been doing it the old school way and who've been taught how to do it the old school way. But, you know, again, I feel like I'm steady evolving as a coach, you know, year by year. Like I said, I believe I'm a life learner. So I was open to it when my coordinators approached me with the opportunity. Again, shout out to our special teams coordinator and associate head coach, Coach Bowen. He was the one that connected with Christian in Modern Football first and came to me with the idea. And boy, am I glad he did, because it did wonders for us in our state championship run this year. Just, you know, the analytic aspect of it. And then going back to Coach Mathis, he's big on stats. And that's one of my duties as well. When we come in after Friday night games or Saturday night games, you know, I'm the statistician as well for our program. And, you know, he likes to know those stats in game. We have a star running back, as you know, Sarah Baker, who's been nationally recognized, and, you know, and our star receiver who's at USC now, Ethan Booby Feaster. He will want to know, hey, how many catches, how many yards, you know, how many carries, does Sarad have right now? Before, I'm on paper and I'm having to, hey, coach, give me a second. I got my phone. I'm calculating that stuff, all that data, man. And man, it was a headache. But with the modern football, man, I'm live tagging that stuff right there. So now, when I get a call up to the booth, him wanting that data and things like that, or our OCs wanting to know something, man, I can just go to that iPad, man, and just boom, 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 and look that information up and get it to him. All right. Very fast. So
Yeah, I mean, when you got a guy like that, it's important you're getting him his touches, right? And how we're getting him involved. I mean, that's a centerpiece of the game plan. But it's not easy to stay on top of it when you're sitting here trying to count up all the things and where we at with it and how we perform it. And I mean, I would say the insight you start to get now in real time becomes extremely useful. Like I said, a lot of the time, it took to halftime to make heads or tails of these things, but now we know some things right away that are useful to a play caller. When you're looking at this state championship run, I mean, can you think of any examples of something that pops out like this was something like knowing this right away was extremely helpful in this win?
Yes, sir. So modern football, it has tools on there, like as far as like I said, the analytics side where tempo, offense. So we move fast, especially, after explosive plays. So it gets kind of, difficult trying to, keep pace. So like I told Christian, and again, Christian was very helpful the first couple games. Okay, he flew down to Texas, sat in the booth with me and kind of helped train me live on the spot. I mean, how many CEOs would do that? Again, shout out to him. He made it a lot easier for me to learn the system and everything like that. But for going back to that state championship example, we might have called like an RPO and things like that. And, after that drive, our OC, Coach Charles Williams, who does a fantastic job with our kids in our program, he called up and, wanted to know, hey, how many times have we hit on inside zone? I was able to go to that modern football app and tell him, hey, coach, inside zone, it's hitting to the field side, about, 50% of our time. And then Coach Sweeney, again, our passing game coordinator, he wanted to know a time or two, hey, how many times have our pin concept worked? And I was able to just go to that app, man, and just tell him, hey, coach, we've hit pin 3 out of 4 times. Or whatever. Who's the target? Could have been Ethan Feaster. Could have been Antron Edmondson, one of our other star receivers at that time. So very helpful.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned you guys are an up-tempo operation, and I know what a nightmare we were up-tempo, really up-tempo at times when I last coach, and hey, guys, like, what did you write here? Like, they're just trying to scribble stuff down and keep up with it. The easy use, being an up-tempo team, the easy use of getting this in and really having it on the iPad, I think is magic.
Yeah. So the funny thing, because, like I said, could just imagine, you're in the drive and man, just like our goal is to call and execute a play within 4 seconds after each play. So that's our philosophy. So we go fast. So I'm trying to write all of this down. Plus, I'm up trying to see the field as well. And so I'm not going to lie to you. I was frustrated in the beginning trying to transition my old school, pen and paper to the digital aspect of the modern football app. And Coach Bowen, he was like, because he's sitting next to me up in the booth, he was like, Lord, just forget about what how we're trying to tell you to do it. Just, you're the one working with the app and every day. Find your own groove, do it what's best for you and how you want to do it. Once they gave me that freedom to do that, and I kind of started getting into my groove.
Train them on what you want and get out of the way and let them figure it out. What's been funny too is some of our most successful at using this have student managers, have somebody who's not necessarily a football person. I mean, we had the state champ from Wisconsin, actually had his wife. We had her on the podcast. She said, I didn't even know the difference between a punt and an extra point. Like, so whatever helps you move fastest, I think is the most important thing because it is a tool that is going to give you that data. And like you said, when you guys are asking before, those questions that they asked you, they already had something on their mind. They just needed that data. You were able to give it to them in real time. And I think that's the magic of what modern football is doing. But I guess transition and all of this, one of the things you talked to me about was just trust in the process. And you've had this, I think, personal experience. Like you told me when you were leaving college and getting into things, there was a thought of being an artist, theater, all those kinds of things that were your interests. But for you, it was kind of sitting back and listening to what does God need you to do and trusting that process and letting it get you to where you want to be. And obviously we've seen, you've talked to us about just the progression that you have in your career. And I think that certainly applies obviously to your athletes and to coaches who are listening in general. But talk to us about, your thoughts on trusting the process.
I'm not a guy that's, afraid to share my faith. I'm a Christian, I was raised a Christian all my life. So, nothing is possible or have been possible in my life without, trusting in God, a lot of prayer, a lot of support that God has put behind me through people. So I'm a big believer in trusting the process, right? And just, trying to get out of my own way and not trying to be as stubborn as I was as a youth and believing that this is all happening because of me, right? So I've progressed through my life in my career, just following that motto of just trusting the process, letting the chips fall where they may, praying on the situation, touching my hands, and everything. I always, tell this story really before I even, had contact with Coach Mathis. I like to have my ducks in a row. I like to do my research. So when I was considering moving my family from East Texas, to Dallas, I started doing my research, getting on the internet, looking at programs, researching the head coaches, the athletic directors, the players and all of that. And, told my wife, I said, babe, you know me, I'm a spiritual guy. So I said, let's take this 3-hour drive from East Texas to DeSoto. I just want to step foot on the campus, right? And just get a feel of my spirit on that campus, the energy of it, and to just pray on site. And I'm glad I did. God opened that door. And he helped connect me with the right people to help give me, an opportunity to get in. And it worked out. So just trusting the process, everything's not going to go your way. That's what I would encourage, any young coach. I got a chance to connect with several young coaches getting into this business at our Texas High School Coaches Association conference in Houston this past weekend. And that was one of the things that I encouraged them as they start their journey. Again, be a sponge. Learn as much as you can learn. Never think that you don't come into this business thinking that you know it all, because you don't. You have to take the mentality of being a life learner. No matter if you're learning or the head coach is saying something down to a middle school assistant, everyone's opinion, you should value that, right? Because you can learn something from everybody. Okay. So, I'm blessed that, that I came in and was not arrogant enough or stubborn enough to accept the middle school job coming from where I'd already started my career as a varsity coach at Nacogdoches. Again, got out of my way and I just trusted in God and trusted that process that, Lord, I don't know where you're leading me, right? But maybe taking a step back for us, the level that I'm at, but I know you're doing this for a reason. And, and I know you're going to eventually elevate me to where I need to be. So, coached at every level in this program, whatever. And it's taught me everything that I needed to know to be successful at the opportunity that I'm and the role that I'm currently playing with this program at DeSoto right now. All right. So again, just to tie all that together, I'm going to continue to preach, trust the process, because you don't know what path God might, lead you down, all right, or whatever. Because, oftentimes what we want for our path in life isn't what he wants. I'm trying to be mindful of that, as I go through my journey.
Absolutely. Our job in that is to go and to keep moving forward and to listen, and it'll all work out. So I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that message. Thanks for sharing about your journey and the things that you've done and being part of an incredible program there at DeSoto. Best of luck here to you and the Eagles as you defend your state championship in 2026.
Yes, sir, Keith. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you.
That's it for today's episode of the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. One of the biggest takeaways from our conversation with Joseph Loyd is that information only becomes valuable when coaches can get it quickly enough to act on it. Modern football helped Coach Loyd move beyond sorting through handwritten notes, calculating statistics, and trying to connect multiple charts during the game. With Modern Football, his staff could immediately see how concepts were performing, whether the offense was staying efficient, and whether its best players were getting the touches they needed. Your charting process should do more than document what happened. It should help your staff decide what happens next. Visit modernfootball.com to see how Modern Football can simplify your game day operation and deliver actionable information between every series.